Right, well, good afternoon everyone to the board of the Ebbsfleet Development Corporation this afternoon. We are doing this remotely, though I'm sure the Chief Executive will come on to this, that now the work from home guidance has been withdrawn by the government. We will be looking to get together for our next board meeting, but this one is remote as that change was last night before this was all scheduled. Welcome everyone. We are recording this. This will be posted on our website and on social media after the meeting. Perhaps we can just start with apologies. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No apologies today.
Great. Any declarations of interest? Neil?
Only the standing declaration about the membership of the planning committee that I think I broadly share with Neil.
I think that's the case. Neil, is there anything in addition to that?
No, it's that standing declaration, and to say that I won't participate in item 13, part 2 of the board paper. Right.
Thank you very much for that. Assuming there are no other declarations of interest, I think we have two sets of minutes. The first was the special board meeting of the Development Corporation on the 6th of December, which dealt with approving our annual report and accounts. That is the first set in front of us. Can I assume that that is a true and fair record of that meeting? Is everyone happy with those minutes? I'm going to assume that is resounding silence to confirming that. Then we have another set. That was our main board meeting on the 15th of December. We have a full set of minutes there. Can I assume that everyone's comfortable with those minutes as well? John?
Yes, thank you. In respect of the items there, I think it was item 2.9, 2.10, reference made during the debate about the vacuum rubbish collection process. There had been consultation with Gratian Borough Council. I have had clarification from officers that that consultation wasn't perhaps as inclusive and widespread as I'd been given the impression in this meeting. And just to be clear on it, there was one meeting where our officer had it mentioned in passing, and the assumption was that the EDC are setting up its own centralised recycling centre, very similar to one at Pepper Hill, and on that basis it's a function for Kent County Council, not Gratian Borough Council or Dartford Borough Council to collect the rubbish. On that basis, our officer wasn't any more concerned. If that is not to be the case for the EDC, then there needs to be proper adequate consultation, because it means completely new plant and equipment, and we're not geared up for that. So if you're thinking about putting it in without consultation, there will be a problem, because we're not able to remove the rubbish.
Thank you for that, John. Ian, can you just pick up on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thanks, John. No, I can reassure you completely, John, that should we pursue further the type of system that you're referring to, and the only likelihood place is probably Ebbsfleet Central, we'll ensure that there is full consultation with the waste collecting authorities concerned.
All right. Good. Other than that, thank you for that, John. Can I assume that we are all comfortable and supportive of those minutes being a true and fair record of the meeting? Right, good. Then we move on to our action log. I think we are making good progress on those. There's nothing which I think particularly, unless people would like to raise any comments on it, requires us to discuss it at the moment.
Just to say, if I may,
sure.
Chair, in terms of 0309, the communications work, I've now commissioned some implementation of some of the recommendations within that paper that the board had previously, and particularly the first one, which was around developing a new narrative for the Garden City. The board had some discussion about that. So I'll be in touch with a number of you over the coming weeks to discuss that further.
Thank you, Ian. Excellent. So that is the action log. Then we have the forward look. Just for people's information, they can see that quite busy there, moving forward through the year. Before we move on to our first substantive item, in part one, I would actually, we've got this is quite an important meeting because in fact 3 of our longest standing meds, it is our last board meeting for the Development Corporation, David, Louise and Bob, who have been non-executive directors of the Development Corporation since April of 2015. So I would like to place on record our thanks to them. They have done 2 terms and also been extended as well, which they didn't have to do. They've made a huge contribution to the Development Corporation over the course of the years. They will be much missed, their wisdom, knowledge and experience. I know when we get the opportunity, I think we will do some kind of social event, try and drag you into Ebbsfleet one last time, or some such thing, so we can be together to thank you personally face to face. But I did want to put on record our thanks to you for all of your hard work over the years. It's not always recognised, the work that non-executive directors do for government agencies, but it certainly is from our perspective for you, and I know from a department perspective as well. They are very grateful. So would anyone like to join me in that or say anything on that? Or
yes, please, Chairman, if I may.
Jeremy, yes.
I know you want to make progress, and one thank you is enough, really, but I think on behalf of the local community, we're always very nervous when people who don't live here come here, however skilled and how much expertise they have. It's always nerve-wracking when people who don't live in an area come in and start to tell us how an area should look. And I won't be honest, I'll be completely honest with you, that's always been one of our concerns. But I have to say, in terms of the 3 departing members, we have really struck gold, and that's certainly my opinion. I think these 3 people have been extraordinary, not only in bringing their expertise, but very clearly bringing their commitment and love for the area to it as well. And I know they don't live here, but I think they're all honorary citizens now of the area, and I think that's the best thing I can say to them, really, is that thank you very much. You've been wonderful for us, and I really am very grateful for the way you've embraced the community, and rather than seeing it just as an appointment. It's been very palpable you've done that, and very, very grateful.
Well said, Jeremy. And John?
Sorry, can his button sorted out? I'd join Jeremy in his comments. I think that what I've seen from how the 3 of you have helped the board and the EDC in the area, you genuinely have had an interest in the local community. I think we may not always agree with each other on certain points, but I think the fact is you have had the community at the heart of what you've been trying to do, and delivering on the government agenda that doesn't always sometimes seem to listen to what local people want or need isn't an easy thing to do. It may in part be the consequence of your appointments coming to an end, because you actually stood up for local people. So that is very much appreciated, and I wish you well in wherever your futures take you.
Well said, John. Well said. And Nick, I think you wanted to come in as well.
I'll be very quick. The obligation of us all is to leave a better place than we found, and the 3 departing non-execs are leaving a very good legacy from their time, and I can tell that they feel proud of it and quite sensitive about their legacy. And from my point of view, and I'm certainly intending to look after it for you.
Well said. Well said. So I don't know if you want to say anything on your part, Bob, Jeremy, and Louise, but we're extremely grateful. You've done a great job. Thank you.
I mean, perhaps just speaking on behalf of my colleagues, I mean, we have been on an incredible journey over the last 7 years. We have started from the evolution of Ebbsfleet, where very little was understood or defined, to the position we're in today, where absolutely we feel very proud as to where things stand, and look forward to seeing what it is like in another 3, 5, 10 years time. But I think, as I said at audit committee this morning, this has been because of the board as a whole. There are very few organisations where I can turn round and say that I have genuinely enjoyed working with everyone on the board, and I have. And I think it's a very special organisation, and it's one that I leave with some regrets, but as Nick said, feeling as though we have done our task and now handing over to someone else. So many thanks for all of your support over the last 6 or 7 years, and also many thanks for the very kind messages that we will have received in our Ebbsfleet books. It is wonderful to read through them, so many thanks.
Good. Well, I'm glad we were able to leave you with a memento of your time on all of this, and well said, David. And I think it's a testament to the work that you've done. Just so people are aware, there has been a very strong application, sort of response to the vacancies that you create, which we will be going through a process over the course of the next few months there, to bring in 3 new NEDs. So I think it's a testament to you how strong that response has been, and there is a lot of diversity in there as well. So Louise has been, I think, sort of waving the banner of diversity. So I'm very pleased that we've got some real diversity in the applicants. So it's not all going to be middle-aged white men. So anyway,
Chairman, I profoundly agree with that. The people that are coming in are much better than the ones who are going.
I did not say that, Jeremy. But Bob, I think you just wanted to say a few words.
Well, yes. I'm actually having an internet problem, so I missed most of the kind words, so I'll have to watch the recording. But thank you for whatever they were. And what I just really want, I mean, I'm certainly helping the diversity by just going, really. So that's a contribution. But I really want to just come back on what John just said, actually, because I've served in a lot of these organisations. And one of the strengths of this one, which will help it go forward, is the involvement of the local authorities and the very active participation of the local authorities representing their communities. And that's been a strength since day one, and it will be a bigger strength as it goes forward and delivers on some of the exciting projects. And like David, I'm sad to be leaving because it is a very exciting time now. We've done a lot of the spade work, and a lot of the benefits of that should come through in the next couple of years. So I really would like to wish everyone and the community of Ebbsfleet the very best for the future.
Well said, Paul. We're going to leave the final words with Louise. Louise.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for the lovely present and the kind words that were in the book that you produced for the 3 of us. Sorry to be leaving, but not wanting to repeat what the others have said. What am I taking away from this experience? And I always remember, Jeremy, the big Barney you and I had over quality and how we were going to approach quality and whether we were going to have a quality mark. And of course, inevitably, we ended up talking about a kite mark. And as I leave the board, wherever I go, when people start talking about a kite mark, I always feel like saying, you mean a Jeremy kite mark? So, anyway. However many times we fell out, Jeremy, we always made up, and that's always a very good sign of the culture in a team.
Well, you take all the laurels, Louise. You are laurel to my hearty.
Right, Louise, well said. Well said.
Oof.
We are now going to move on to the business of the day. So, Ian, we have your Chief Executive's Part 1 report, if you could take us through that, please.
Thank you, Simon. Firstly, just to note that a number of the reports, standing reports this month, are a little shorter than normal, and that's almost entirely down to the fact that we had couple of week Christmas break in between the board meetings, and it wasn't a very long period in between. So, but to reassure you, we've covered all the business in the papers that we need to cover as usual. It's just been a shorter period of time. In terms of health and safety, Simon, thank you. You said in your introductions that the government changed the working from home guidance yesterday. We already have discussed that as directors and have informed the staff that we intend to open the office back up for attendance as from Monday. We are still proposing to take some precautionary measures, so we will still for a little while operate at a less than full capacity, so we'll limit the numbers. We are still seeing cases amongst our workforce, and I think particularly as we head towards the end of the year, we're conscious of organisational resilience, so we just want to manage that. But people will be able to attend on the days that they wish to. We will continue to ask people to test before coming in. So just some precautionary measures to ensure that the workforce and the organisation stays resilient. But as you also said, I would expect at your call that we'll be back having in-person board meetings in March. I think that would be excellent, and I think that's something that we can expect and look forward to. I don't wish to prolong this anymore, but I think it is very important for myself as the chief executive, the directors and the whole staff of the organisation to pay its own tribute to David, Bob and Louise. The support that we have received, me personally and many members of the staff team over the last 7 years, personal support from either Bob, David or Louise, that's personal phone calls, help and assistance, just guidance on things, I think has gone beyond what may normally be expected of non-exec directors in our roles, and I have to say it's been hugely appreciated. The way that you as non-execs are able to raise challenge with the team, but do so in a way that is really constructive and positive, never goes unnoticed, and has been hugely appreciated. So I would like to pass on the thanks of the whole staff and mine personally to you, and wish you and your families all the very best for the future. And thank you very much for your fantastic support and guidance over the last 7 years to the staff team. This month we're reporting on the performance to the end of December, so the end of the third quarter. You have a performance report with a detailed analysis of our progress against the priority set out in our annual business plan. You can see from that they are nearly all rated positively. I'm very happy to take any questions on the detail of that. One or two milestones we've dropped a little behind due to circumstances outside of our control, one of around Ebbsfleet Central and the designation of the triple SI, which wasn't foreseen at the time we wrote the business plan, and then we've had to postpone the bringing forward of the community building on Castle Hill Block D. In terms of performance against the KPIs, again you've got a detailed analysis there. Mark will probably say a little bit more in his planning paper, but we're at around 438 completions as at the end of the month, end of December, of which 131 are affordable. So we do believe that we're well on track to achieve the housing delivery target that the board set at the beginning of the year, which was 525. I think I'll stop there, Simon, and just see whether there are any questions from board members.
Thank you very much, Ian. Very kind words to our departing Neds as well. Board, are there any comments on this? I think in particular on our KPIs and performance to date. Nick, can I bring you in, please?
Can't hear you, Nick.
Nick?
Good performance having regard to COVID, and I think it's tremendous that the housing production maintained its flow in that context. I'm interested in the production of the next set of KPIs, I guess, which is one part. In the context of good financial management and being within 10% tolerance of the overall annual capital budget, what were we at, and do we think that we could concertina that target next year, towards 5%, or thoughts? What were we actually at, and should we concertina?
Nick, thank you. In terms of, do you mean future KPIs for next year?
Yep.
Yeah, we're beginning to do work around those, Nick. As I've discussed with the board in the last couple of sessions, I'm not intending to bring a draft business plan with KPIs to you until we know how much money we've got. I don't think we can begin to set targets until we know what resources we've got available to us. But we are doing background work to look at housing delivery, what we expect it to be, etc. So we will, in due course, come to you with those fully explained and set out. But so I think the business planning process will probably run a little bit behind where we've the schedule we run it to in previous years, because we still don't currently know our budget allocations for next year. On the 10% tolerance, Gerard might be able to cover this in his paper in terms of where we are exactly at the moment, and we're on track to be well within that 10%. That's a sort of 10% guidance number that the department operate to. I think historically we have been much closer to that figure, to the actual figure than 10%, and I would expect us to be well within that tolerance. I mean, we try at this time of the year, we're talking about the budgets every week, and looking at how we can nail it to within less than 1%. So we don't sort of sit on our laurels and expect it to be 10%.
I mean, at the MOD, at month 6, the KPI is to be within 2%.
Yeah.
Or fix at month 6 to make sure you're definitely within 2%.
Yeah. We aim to spend every penny, Nick. To be brutally honest with you. So.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a busy agenda, so I think we'll move on from here. Just one point from myself. Obviously, it's very encouraging that in the financial year to date that we've had 438 completions, as has been mentioned, against our target, which we're confident of hitting, of 525. That where we are at the moment, that brings the total number of completions in the Garden City to 2,802. So I think we should, it feels on the current run rate that probably in May, early June, we will be hitting 3,000 homes, and I think we should do some publicity around that.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a kind of visible milestone that people can get their heads around. So, if we can think about that, Ian, that would be great. Can
I just ask,
Simon, of course, Daniel.
Those are completions. Is it still the case that they are very rapidly being sold and being occupied? So
Yes.
there's real community that being built up.
Absolutely, Dan. I think one of the characteristics of Garden City and the sites that are here, the developers will all tell you this. They carry virtually no stock, so they're selling off plan, well ahead of completions. The only time in the last 4 years that I can remember any of the developers mentioning a small handful of units that they had stock was around when there was some uncertainty around Brexit, and but that was very, very short-lived. So they don't carry any stock at all. They're selling well ahead off plan.
And people are moving in. They're not
absolutely,
speculatively or anything like that.
Yeah.
People are moving in and communities are being created.
Absolutely.
Good.
Very, very little sort of buy-to-let investment properties being sold here. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think just
good news.
Just to reiterate that point, I think there was some research from, I think it was Hamptons International, around the most popular location for what was, I think, described as London leavers.
Yeah.
Where London leavers were going to, and that was Dartford. So that was the strong Jeremy Kite pull factor there.
Yeah.
So that's I think was some interesting hard data there on popularity of Dartford, which obviously hard development corporations in Dartford, of course. So look, good progress on this, Ian. Thank you to the team for this on the KPIs. So that is duly noted by the board, and perhaps we can move on to Ebbsfleet Living. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just pull out a couple of highlights of the paper out for this month, if that's okay. Obviously, COVID had quite an impact potentially before Christmas, as Omicron kind of took over. A lot of people were a bit weary about going out. However, I'm glad to say all the events we had planned around Christmas time did actually take place. Of note, we had a Christmas market over 2 days. The Christmas market had 25 stalls over the 2 days, and all of those stalls were from local entrepreneurs and businesses. It wasn't people coming in, it was people who've moved into Ebbsfleet, who started making things or baking things in their area and wanted to sort of get out there and share them with their neighbours and sell them and show what they could do. So that was really encouraging to see how future businesses and community will grow, to see that many entrepreneurs in the area. We also, before Christmas, had a travelling pop-up carol service, which again was a kind of COVID friendly. Instead of everyone going to one place, the carol service went to 4 different locations in the Garden City. A number of the churches and schools pre-recorded nativity plays, concerts and other things that were played in different locations across the Garden City. So that was hugely successful despite the plummeting temperatures we had the weekend before Christmas. So as I say, really great to see a community that's resilient despite COVID and temperatures to get out there and do things. And then really just to comment also at the market, we had a consultation on our ambitions for the Health and Wellbeing Hub, which will be in Ebbsfleet Central. And again, apart from the mulled wine, that was the most popular stall at the market. So again, really shows the interest people have locally in getting involved in co-designing and helping shaping our community buildings of the future, which is encouraging. And finally, for me, just to look forward to what we're planning for the year ahead. Obviously, we have the Platinum Queen's Jubilee this year, so we really want to work with residents and community to see how we celebrate that. And to kick that off, over February and March, we're going to be offering a free mature tree to every home in the Garden City to hope that every household can plant a tree to remember the Jubilee from. And we'll be doing that in a number of events over February and March. So I'm glad to say we've actually been able to secure procured a local nursery who are producing and growing these trees, and it'll be great to see them sort of planted in the Garden City. And finally, do mark note that we will be having a Springhead Winter Garden Festival this weekend. So a really great event that's got a lot of publicity even on Kent Online at the minute. Cohesion Plus, who are a local arts organisation, will be working with the residents of Springhead who have had less events and activities over the last couple of years. So it's great to see an event at Springhead and a little bit of light in the midst of the winter gloom over the next month. So happy to take any questions on the report.
All right, Kevin, look, thank you very much for that. I assume that we're indicating to people where they should plant their tree, not allowing kind of free-form tree planting.
No, as part of the process, and that's the advantage of having a local nursery. They're going to be on site, telling people, how to plant it, where to plant it, how to look after it. We're also going to try and stimulate a whole kind of army of volunteers, of people who help each other to plant the trees and share knowledge. So again, it's a good opportunity to bring people together, and also to kick off this Queen's Platinum Jubilee, where there's a real push for trees and planting and legacy to come from that. But yeah, we really want to make sure people plant them in the right place and look after it as well.
Great. Thank you for all the hard work on this. Board, any other comments? No, thank you for that. Kevin, perhaps we can think about some way in which we can, memorialise what's a tremendous date for Her Majesty within the Garden City. Some permanent, not talking statues, obviously, but something. I think it's it might be a nice thing to do. Nick, can I bring you in? No, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you.
Mute, Nick.
Kevin, I was interested in the public artwork for Whitecliff. Very interesting installation. The Harlow Newtown public art in the 60s, and possibly even earlier than that, was fairly groundbreaking, and I'm interested in our thoughts about, in addition to the Garden City, what we think that Ebbsfleet Central, particularly its ambition for its public art strategy, because actually, we have a rare privilege to be building a city here, and that's a once in every 25 years opportunity, and our public art strategy has to be generational in a way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there was a celebration last year on 50 years of public art in Harlow. Some of it's become so infamous that it's had to be secured away because its value. But it was a trend, and all of the new towns, Milton Keynes was particularly famous for a lot of its art as well. So that's in part why the Arts Council funded our cultural strategy, because they were really keen to see what we could do in a new town development again. So Laura and my team have been working with Arts Council and residents and others to try and see what people would find more appropriate. I think the difference between our approach will be we'd like to involve the community as much as possible in what comes from the public art. I guess perhaps the example from Whitecliff is one that's kind of part of an earlier strategy, but they're now trying to engage the local people in kind of choosing what comes through in that. But I think as we move forward, we want to become a more refined public art policy, perhaps in Ebbsfleet Central. But we're really keen that that's not just about helicopter RI things dropping in, but again, the process for why should we develop art, involving the community and sort of integrating it into public realm and other things. So that's our approach at the minute, but we are not sort of predisposing what that might be in terms of actual things appearing in the community.
Is there some logic to sort of seed funding almost, or helping to be established a sort of Ebbsfleet Arts Council? At our Romford development, we signed a 10-year agreement with Havering Arts Council to panelise all of the public art and all the meanwhile uses, which is another angle on that in terms of how are you going to public art the development when it's still a phased development. How are you treating the hoardings, et cetera, et cetera? How are you treating the vacant spaces while, future phases, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a good point. We do have an overarching strategy at the minute, and then we're working on a side-by-side basis, Whitecliff being an example where there's a sort of local panel looking at that. But you're right, Nick, there might be some things that we could pull together more holistically across the Garden City. So we'll take that away as a team and have a look at that.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Daniel, please.
I've got a lot of experience of commissioning public art for public display, and I'd be very happy to talk to Kevin about a commissioning strategy for future phases. I think very much, I hope we'd all agree with the target of ensuring not only community involvement, but the sort of durable excellence that was demonstrated, as Nick rightly pointed out, in the new towns of the 50s and 60s. So that, I mean, I don't want them to be so valuable they have to be put away in a cage in 40 or 50 years' time. But I think, you know, high quality, really excellent stuff that lasts and enhances the reputation of the Garden City would be something to aim at. And I'd be very happy to work with Kevin on that if you wanted me to.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Right, great. Thank you, Daniel. Kevin, that report is for noting by the board, so it is duly noted. That brings us on to Mark and our communications update.
Thank you, Chair. There was only one real story for December, and that was our press release regarding the planning approval of 138 apartments for the second phase of a Bellway Homes scheme in Alkerdon. Our website was viewed by 5,660 people, making it a record for any December since we first started logging these achievements about 6 years ago now. I've had a look at the website figures today. We're on track to hit about 6,000 individual users, with nearly 4,000 having looked at us so far today. And December's board video was seen by 485 people, which is down on last month, which was an exceptional month. But yeah, so that's it at the moment. Simon?
Right, thank you for that. Ian, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, just to add about some media activity that probably came in after we sent the papers out. Actually, there's were a couple of reports, one locally, then it was picked up nationally about school places and some children living in Castle Hill, their families living in Castle Hill, that weren't allocated a place at the local primary school. This was something that we were aware of from last March, when the school places were allocated. I did an interview with the journalist, as did KCC, who, as the Education Authority, are responsible for school place planning. But it was, as it was picked up by the one of the national press, I mean, it was an unfortunate situation, and as I explained in my interview, it comes about because of the timing of the delivery of schools. If you deliver schools too late in the development process, so you've got a lot of residents here and there's no schools, clearly those residents can't go to a local school because there isn't one. If you deliver them early, which is preference and what we're doing here in the Garden City by and large, then if there aren't enough parents and families and with primary age children, when you build the school, then people from further afield can apply and will be allocated a place. And then the situation that's arisen is that some of those families then have siblings who subsequently wish to come to, and they get allocated priority above local children. So we absolutely understand that it's very difficult if you don't get allocated to school, and hard to understand why that would be the case if the school is literally across the road from you or down the road. The particular family, I think, that were reported in there, they were offered a not Castle Hill school, but they were offered a much more local school than they eventually chose to go to themselves. They were reported as travelling to Longfield, but they were actually offered a much more local school, but they chose to take a place elsewhere. So, but that was a story that has been running. I do have regular dialogue with Kent County Council, the school place planning authority, and in order to ensure that we monitor carefully, they monitor carefully the take up of schools, the availability of places, and they reassure me that they do that, and we're in constant dialogue with them about the provision of school places across the Garden City.
Ian, before I bring Jeremy in, obviously I've had experience of this. So, I have seen situations where schools have changed their admissions policy if they are within a sort of definable area, like a parish or something, to give priority to children from the parish over and above siblings, which what that does is mean that it prioritises local children over the siblings of siblings of children who may have got in from further afield. That can help to get more local people in, but that's obviously up to the school and the local education authority. But clearly it's, it is of significant concern. One of the reasons people move to the Garden City is they can get their children into good and outstanding local schools in close proximity. We do want to avoid, long journeys to, in terms of where their children are going to school. But Jeremy, can I bring you in?
Thank you, Simon. I was going to make the same point. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, to change an allocation policy, and it's certainly not something you can switch on and off. But I think this is an area where it might be worth a letter, nothing more perhaps, but just a letter to national government, to the education department, just to make it clear that in areas like this, there is a case for having a 5-year moratorium on the sibling policy at schools when there is a big development going on, because this crops up in a number of places, and it would make a lot of sense that the sibling connection follows the second child. In other words, once a child is allocated a place outside of those 5-year period, it's incumbent upon the second school to accept the first child, rather than have the second child accepted in the first school. I think it would make sense because there is a degree of concern about it, and no one can win. It's no one's fault. I mean, the school has done the right thing. Nobody wants to see a school operating empty, but parents also want to see their local school being local. So I'm wondering it might be worth just registering our concern and maybe asking the education department to think about some guidance going forward.
Thanks, Jeremy. That's helpful.
Yeah, look, I can, Ian, I know the Secretary of State for Education. I can give you, contact details other than through his, Westminster parliamentary email address and his SPAD team as well. So I think it would be good if we can do something here. There would be a concern that the situation could get worse. Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you for that, Jeremy. Thank you for raising that point. All right, Mark. Hopefully the excitement of all of this will drive up our viewing figures for this month. So thank you for all of that. That is duly noted. Now we move on to our next paper. This is Mark Pullen, Planning and Housing Delivery Report. I think we talked a little bit to this, Mark, but please take us through this, yeah?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Yeah, just a few things I suppose to pick up on the things that haven't been touched on already. Obviously, there's the forward plan for the committee. So we aren't meeting this month. We have a couple of potential items identified for next. The Bellway scheme at Alcadon, so it's a parcel 5A, so that will be the third residential parcel at Alcadon is very likely. Redrose slightly less likely. We just need to go through the plans and the consultations for that. Just to clarify, I think Alcadon South in some areas in my paper is listed as 227. I think, and in some places it is 221. It is actually 227 homes. So apologies for any confusion there. Neil and I had a really helpful discussion on Monday morning around potential training for the committee. Through the year, we've been trying to obviously look at sort of an annual program for training. Obviously, everyone has to do training when they start. So we had a good discussion about that. So we'll roll that out when the weather warms up a little bit, I think. In terms of development updates, it's very common to have a little bit of a burst of activity just before Christmas. The developers try and get all of their applications and revised plans in. Equally, my officers try and get all of their decisions out. So the week before Christmas was quite busy, but we sort of got through all of that, and then things are now back to a more sort of even footing. Quite a lot of work happening on Cable Wharf School. So the Keepmo scheme down at North East, there's a new primary school going in there. So there'll be some public consultation happening by KCC in due course. The applications expected in March. Design forum happens next week. Quick update for the board included in section 4 on the resorts. As you can see, there was some correspondence from PINS just before Christmas EPC as LPA responded jointly with Dartford and Kent. There was also a landowner response that I know that Jen sent in. There is now a process whereby if interested parties want to comment back on what other people have said, people can do that by the 24th. We aren't planning to do that. I don't think we have any further comments to make at the moment. PIN's procedural decision will be by the 1st, on the 1st of February, no doubt. So we'll wait to see. We'll wait to see what happens there. General feedback from the majority of the interested parties that wrote in was around having certainty around the programme moving forward. So hopefully some dates can be set. We've spoken about housing numbers a little already. Just to flag, we do have a developers meeting on Tuesday, so we'll continue to get some intel from the developers around any particular site issues from then. We are starting to look at the forecasting work for next year. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark. Board, are there any questions? Yes, David, and then Neil.
Yeah, Mark, the start but not completed has sort of spiked quite heavily back in December, and I'm always interested in these statistics. Is there anything that we should be reading into that? Because that is quite a dramatic lift from anything we've seen over the last sort of 18 months, really.
Yeah, last month we were due some data from Clarion, and we got their data, and essentially they have advised that they've started the entire section through Castle Hill South. So I think that they've been sort of delivering that. Obviously some developers might go parcel by parcel, starting complete as they go. Clarion's generally started more, and then presumably then the completion figure will be relatively punchy at some point as well. So the reason for that is down to one particular developer in one particular location.
Okay, so I guess we will use that in setting our completions KPI for the coming year.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Neil, and then Nick. Jeremy, I think that may be a legacy hand from you, but Neil and then Nick.
Thank you, Simon. 3 points. First of all, Mark, in the report you say that the figures cover all the developers apart from the last 2 months from Taylor Wimpey and Keep Mode. And I noticed that they're on a couple of sites. So I would first is, can we hope for more completions from them, which is going to make the figure more encouraging. And then, Simon, you mentioned at the beginning that when we get up to 3,000 completions, that might be a time to celebrate that fact. And that seems to me to be a good idea. But I wondered whether we ought to combine that, rather than looking at the absolute number of the 3,000, important as that is, look at the communities that are being created and try and coincide celebration of a number with progress on building a community and a place. And I think it would be good to try and combine the two. So we've completed 3,000, but this has resulted in people having homes in community in these places, whether we're looking to and look forward to Alcaden coming along, Ashmere coming along. So just put it in context. And the third thing was, Mark mentioned the training, which he and I have discussed, and I'm rather hoping, and I think he's hoping, that we can use that together with some meetings to go and look at sites to get the planning committee to gel together. We've got some new members, and it will be a good way of us all meeting informally as well, try and, as I say, gel together as a committee, which I think we have been doing, but there's always more that can be done.
So if I just come back on those, so Taylor Wimpey's end of business year was actually the end of December, so we're expecting some completions from them. They did liaise with us to sort of say we are quite busy, we'll sort of come back to you next month type thing. So yes, so we're expecting some stuff from them. Keepmo did have some quite high completion figures earlier in the year when a large apartment block completed, but I imagine that there'll be some other numbers there. I think the point around the community is really, really important, actually. And I think that, yeah, we do talk about housing numbers, but it's interesting the number of schools that have been delivered, the amount of open space that's coming forward, various different bits of infrastructure as well. So, yeah, so I'm sure that there's a way in which we can sort of pull all of those bits together. And yeah, we'll definitely include site visits to the consented and sort of emerging communities as part of the committee training day. So I always like to get out and about. So yeah, that's fine.
Excellent, Neil. Yeah, very well made the point on community there, Neil. So make sure that's woven in. Nick, and then Daniel, please.
Nick, I think you're muted.
Apologies. I have more than 3 points on the 2,802, and as we head towards the 3,000, and picking up on Neil's community point and family point. I think we need to have the analysis on the HAB rooms in the context of 1, 2s and 3s. I'm then interested in what you think is currently the profiling of the affordable coming through, and pro rata between shared ownership and affordable rent. The question is, are we actively monitoring all the sites to make sure everybody is compliant with their pro rata affordable obligations? Or are we just trusting on them to behave? I'm interested in discussions that you may have had with some of our house builder partners on their thoughts about PRS coming through, which doesn't need them to change their planning, obviously, because if they got private residential, then that allows them to switch PRS. But particularly Countryside, I know, done many deals with the likes of PRS REIT and Sigma REIT, and it allows us to really accelerate completions and occupancies. And generally, I like to hear about what plans our existing house builders have for that. And then finally, I note that we still don't have an opening date for the Berkeley Homes factory, and it must be 2.5 years. I mean, I've seen amazing pictures of the machines that they've ordered and putting in, but it is now 2 years, 2.5.
Yes, I think so.
I mean,
okay, yeah, just to go through this habitable room number. Yeah, we can. I think I'll have to take that away. I don't know how resource intensive it will be to then go back through the plans to try to then work out.
So it's. I mean, I'm too London centric. It's permanently HAB room.
Yeah.
But it's just an issue of 1, 2s and 3s and 4s.
Yeah, we've definitely got the. We've definitely got the split data, which I provided in previous reports, but we'll obviously continue to update that. Equally, the techie stuff that we did on some of the housing mix and the tenure split. I mean, I think that generally the affordable homes are coming forward. Obviously, the KPI talks about 30%. I think generally the programme now looks at around 30% a year. At one point, I was a little bit concerned it was probably going to be around 25, but the consent sort of seemed to be sort of trying to make up some of the some of the difference now. So I think that will be relatively even, primarily because the way in which the Eastern Quarry consent was amended in 2018 does require a much more even delivery parcel by parcel. So that should help with that. Generally, there's other split. I think I mentioned previously that there has been more consents granted around shared ownership because the way in which the legal agreements work to the affordable rents. Monitoring, we do a lot of. It's an area that I would quite like to expand in terms of resource across the team next year. Monitoring on affordable housing delivery, I think, is absolutely covered. We generally get that data from the developers. We can obviously work out those different homes that are done. We do monitoring around compliance with approved plans. And and that's something that I definitely want to be working on. But no, I can certainly give boards the assurance, the fact that the affordable housing, the homes are being built that's supposed to be affordable, are being delivered as affordable. On the PRS front, yeah, there's been a couple of areas of interest. One was at Alcadon, one was at Ashmere. The Alcadon interest seems to have moved away now. The developer that was looking at that particular area around the market centre doesn't appear to be sort of wanting to promote PRS at the moment. However, a section of Ashmere, obviously to the western village, closer to Blue Water and Eastern Quarry, we are in pre-app discussions at the moment on a phase which could then include PRS. It's actually something that I meant to include on the committee training schedule because I think it's an interesting sort of product that the committee might be quite interested in looking at. So yes, so potentially just one location at the moment for that. And Berkeley, yeah, we will continue to engage with them to try to seek a date. I haven't received a particular update recently, Ian. I'm not sure if you would have done, but I know that my officers who are liaising with Berkeley haven't had an update.
I've got to catch up with the chief executive next week, so I'll find out exactly what's going on, Mark.
Great, thank you, Simon.
Thank you for that. Daniel.
I wondered if Mark could elaborate a little bit on the questions, paragraph 4, to do with the London resort. And in particular, these complicated questions that have been sent out from PINS are obviously based on a background of development of events that have happened in the last little while. That if it would just help to where Mark sees it. What are the hold-ups and why are all these questions being asked about delay and so forth?
I think that some of this comes from a change in the lead examiner. So obviously the application was accepted for examination by PINS last January. They then appointed a lead examiner. That person changed towards the end of last year. Someone new has come on board, and I think that they've reviewed the case, and they've obviously then been posing these questions to all interested parties. From my experience and from talking to others, this is quite unusual. I think that, I mean, obviously the resort have been talking to PINS and the examining authority, in relation to the SSSI designation and, obviously various other bits of work happening. So in terms of the extension of the programme, that is not common. And I think obviously the person that's come in, has obviously wanted to check some of those assumptions around that. I think there were various areas where the questions are ultimately areas for the examining authority to be making a decision on. And I think that generally the commonality between the responses, I think there was about 50 responses from the interested parties. Generally, people were saying, whenever an examination takes place, people need to have sufficient time to be able to mobilise so that it's going to be done in a worthwhile fashion. June and July was mentioned previously, but when a date is set, there shouldn't be any continuing delays because it does carry on the uncertainty for the local community and the local businesses in the area.
I can understand why the change of lead examiner might lead to a delay, but the import of these questions is that the delay is being sought by the applicant because questions are about what progress reports the applicant will submit to show that the delay is being used, the time is being used well. Well, that wouldn't be something asked of them if it was just the lead examiner would like a delay while he catches or she catches up. So where is the impetus for the delay coming from? Is there any impetus over and above the fact that the lead examiner to adjust to the new, has to find their feet for the hearing?
Yes, sorry, just to clarify, Daniel, the delays have generally been requested by LRCH, and the previous correspondence that was being looked at, the resort promoters were looking at a consultation with the community through February with the idea of then having the preliminary meeting in June and July. And so that's where the request for the delay have come from. The lead examiner coming in, I think, asking the questions is just double checking all of those sort of decisions and checking in with the interested parties around that. I mean, obviously we have written to PINS, to obviously stress the fact that we want sufficient sort of lead in time to be able to sort of properly engage in an examination. We haven't had any planning discussions with the planning consultants or lawyers, etc. for some time. So, but obviously the offers out there, whenever the resort people are promoters are prepared are ready to engage, we are obviously ready.
It does show in retrospect that the applicant should have listened to our objections about their basic state of unreadiness when they submitted the application. Then we wouldn't have had so many delays, I suspect. But thank you very much for explaining that.
Okay.
Thank you, Daniel. I think we've had a good conversation around this piece. Thank you very much, Mark. That is for noting by the board. Julia, our investment plan update.
Thank you, Chair. So just to take you through the kind of highlights of the report, as you can see in para 1.1, at the end of December, our expenditure was 12.6 million. We had to achieve more than that, but we did have one invoice which didn't arrive then, but has now arrived and has been paid. So I would expect, on the basis of where we are today, by the end of January, we will have expended probably 14.7 million, which is where we need to be at this current stage in the financial year, obviously with 2 months left to go. On that basis, following up from the earlier conversation, we do expect to achieve the budget that we have provided to us by the department, so that will be fully achieved. We are on pretty much a daily basis monitoring how we then track through the expenditure of our capital receipts, making sure obviously that we don't overexpend and we get the capital receipts we need in. So we're kind of making sure that we guide in to the exact position that we require. It's something we've done before, so clearly we will use the lessons learned from previous years to make sure that we get to the point so we achieve the budget available to us. Moving on from there, in terms of where we are, in terms of programme update, in section 2, obviously there are some outline business cases coming forward today in part 2. We have had to obviously rewrite some of our business cases to get them into the new format. And the team are rapidly working on other business cases to come forward to the board after that as we go. Clearly, we still do not know our budget for next year, but the team have taken the view that we will absolutely achieve everything that we set out to do this year, so it puts us in the best place possible for a really rapid start into the new financial year once we do know our budget. I think that's the best thing we can do to protect next year's budget from where we are. In terms of programme level risks in section 3, we are seeing the market start to settle. There is good supply of some materials, but there are some materials which are still in short supply, and we're making sure we're taking into account of that when we are setting our budgets. As I say, very short period between the last board meeting and this one. There has been a lot of work that the team have been doing, getting reports in, getting business cases starting to be written up, so that we really have a strong finish to the financial year. I'm happy to pick up any key points from board members. Again, health and safety wise, again, we've had a good year, and there's been no reportable incidents on the assets in the period to date. It's generally been quiet, and that's been the case all around the country. So that was really the report to date.
Thank you, Julia. Board, are there any comments on this update? Bob, please.
Just a quick comment, really, Chair, that I think the staff should be congratulated, because it's obviously been quite difficult this year, both with the pandemic and also with the lack of resource for next year not being known. It makes it quite difficult to tailor this just to come to the end of the financial year with the right number. So I do appreciate this is quite a tricky exercise, which they appear to be handling very well indeed. And well done if you do get to within that 10% figure. Good luck.
Thanks, Bob. It's been a great team effort from everyone. So.
Great, well said, Bob. Julia, thank you to you and the team for this. That report is to be noted. That then brings us on to Gerard and the Finance and Operations report.
Thank you, Chair. The report shows the position as at the end of December. Julia's just explained the capital situation. The revenue situation is explained and details are at Annex A. As mentioned last month, the department have agreed that we can carry over 650,000 of revenue to offset the London Resort DCO examination process, which is expected next year now. Picking up on the conversation with Ian earlier on, I can ensure that we do take steps to come in as close as possible to our spend targets and to ensure that we don't go over. We don't spend just for the sake of spending, and we do ensure value for money, so I can reassure board and the public on that. And finally, I'd just like to say my thanks and best wishes to David, Louise and Bob.
Well said, Gerard. Before I bring in the rest of the board, can I just check, do we have all board sign-offs for the annual report and accounts? What's the status of that, please?
We do. We have full board approval for that for the 2021 annual report and accounts. It has been signed off by our external auditors, the National Audit Office, and it's literally with the printers and will be laid before Parliament before the end of this calendar month, and then will become a public document and will be available on our website.
Excellent. Well done. Well done to you and the team on that. Excellent. So any further comments on the financial update? Bob, I think that's a legacy hand, is it? Yeah. Okay, great. So that is duly noted then. So thank you very much for that, Gerard. I think that then brings us to the end of part one part of our meeting. There were a series of questions from the general public. Thank you very much for those. We will be putting written responses to those on our website after this board meeting. Can I just ask everyone who's participated in this and also viewed this board meeting, we will be back together physically, though smaller in number till we have our new NEDs on. Anyway, thank you very much to everyone, and we will now move to a busy agenda for our part two part of the meeting. Thank you.